We got a first-time winner in Supercross on Saturday night. Carvana maybe has jumped the gun a little bit on Jimmie Johnson's Daytona 500. Plus, I'm back in studio, and we've got cars on track. Welcome back to Brake Hard. I'm Matt, back at the Brake Hard East headquarters after spending a little bit over a week out at the Brake Hard West headquarters in Steamboat Springs. I have to say one thing real quick before we get into this. Denver, if you live in Denver, why? Why are you doing this to yourself? It is a terrible city, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. Your infrastructure is awful. I-70 is terrible. There's too many people there for how fast the city has grown. The infrastructure has just not kept up with it whatsoever. Your airport is basically the Charles de Gaulle of airports in the United States. If you're not familiar, Charles de Gaulle is in Paris, and the airport is just nowhere near the actual city where you anticipate on going. It's in the vicinity of the city. You're certainly closer to your destination than you were from wherever you came from, but you're still not very close. You're still in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Should have flown into Hayden. Lesson learned. It wasn't available this time. At least the times didn't line up for it, or else I would have done that to avoid going to Denver. But if you do live in Denver, why? Can I help you move somewhere else? But other than that, absolutely fantastic week out at Steamboat. Of course, the day I leave, they get a foot of snow. Whatever. It's fine. Not bitter. Not jealous. None of that. None of that at all. But I am excited because we have cars on the racetrack this week. The Daytona 500 is a week from now. At this time next week, when you're watching this, there will be cars on track, or the race will already be over, depending on what time you're going to watch this. But we get started on Wednesday with a Cup Series practice at 10 o'clock in the morning on FS1. We then have Daytona 500 qualifying Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, duels on Thursday, truck race Friday, ARCA and Xfinity on Saturday, Cup Daytona 500 on Sunday. I'm excited to be there. I'll be there for all 3 nights. If you're there, say hello. I'll have brake hard stuff on. I got hats now. We've got a lot of things going on over here, which is absolutely fantastic, and I'm excited for it. But let's get into what we want to talk about today. We'll start off with what happened in Supercross on Saturday night in Tampa Bay, where we got a first-time winner in the 450 class, Malcolm Stewart. Stop me if you've heard this before. A Stewart is fast through the whoops, because that's exactly what happened on Saturday night. Mookie ate the field up through the whoop section. He absolutely annihilated them. Pressures Chase Sexton into a mistake there. The crowd building as he approached Sexton, as he was reeling him in like he was Kevin Van Dam in the Bassmaster Classic, forces him into a mistake. Sexton goes down. Mookie takes the lead. Place absolutely erupts. You have James Stewart up in the booth calling his brother home to his first 450 Supercross win. 108 starts, 32 years old, finally gets it done. Incredible, right? At no point this year did I think that Malcolm Stewart on a Husqvarna was going to win a 450 main event, but he did it on Saturday night, and I could not be happier for the guy. I mean, he put in the ride of his life, and he passed everybody basically in the same spot, coming out of the whoops into the corner, passing everybody right there, ends up taking the lead, like I said, and never looked back. In his post-race, he was fired up as he should have been, and he was like, the crowd was twisting that throttle for me, because at one point I was like, I don't know if I can do this. Put himself in position. He ends up winning. Could not be happier for him and that entire Stewart family over there. That's why whoops matter, though. I know they want to limit it to just 9 whoops in a section. No, make it the whole length of the stadium. Who cares at this point? Because it helps out certain guys the same way that certain types of corners help out other guys. The speed check jumps help out some certain guys. Dragon backs help out some people. The same way, like all of those kind of play into other people's, expertise. Whoops play into certain other people as well. And Malcolm just absolutely ate through there on Saturday night. It was a weird race, though. We get started in qualifying. Eli Tomac seems to tweak his knee, his leg, something of that sort. Pulled off the track. He ends up being okay, which is good, but he still finished a lap down in like 17th in the feature, so clearly not fully okay, especially at a time where now the championship is wide open, especially with Jet being out for his torn ACL that he announced earlier in this week that he suffered last week. Not ideal there, but Chase Sexton kind of got out to an early lead. It seemed like he was going to assert himself as that new championship favorite, be the first guy to win twice this year in Supercross. Doesn't get it done. He ends up going down in the whoops there. He said that he messed up the brakes on his bike when he went down. Was relegated back to, I think, 4th is where he ended up coming home at. not ideal for him. You have Cooper Webb, who had kind of gotten buried at the start. He rides back up, finishes second. Jason Anderson, who fell back to fifth, ends up finishing in third on the podium as well. Great ride for him. Roczen, who I told you guys is just going to point these guys to death and still remain in that championship conversation. He got caught up in the sand section with two lappers, knocked one of them down with his head, basically he hit his head on the front wheel of the other lapper, took that guy down. Roczen gets up. He's trying to get that bike going, doesn't realize the chain is off, and because Suzuki's too cheap to build a bike with an electric start on it, Kenny's over there just kicking his little heart out like he's Charlie Brown and just could not get it done, and then realizes that he's just got to push the bike off the track there. Not ideal for him. Overall, this race was pretty wild, and Tampa absolutely delivered. I love when you have a sand section in that track. You got that dark Florida dirt as well. Everything about that race on Saturday night, top to bottom, really, really good. It's one of those races, you're always, guaranteed one of these races every Supercross season where you're left going, what the hell just happened here? How did this go on? And that's exactly what Saturday night was in Tampa. So now the 450-point standings still have Chase Sexton in the lead. He has a 5-point lead over Cooper Webb, a 17-point lead over Jason Anderson, an 18-point lead over Ken Roczen, and a 21-point lead over Eli Tomac. This championship is still very much wide open, but if Sexton can rack off, 3-4 wins within like the next 6 races or so, he could really push himself forward in this battle. But Cooper Webb is just unrelenting. He just keeps going. I'm not calling him a cockroach. I'm just saying that he's like a cockroach in the sense that like you think you're getting rid of them, you're not. He's always going to be here. You turn the light on, guess what? Cooper Webb's right there, scaring the crap out of you. That's what he does. He is going to find a way to remain in this championship. He's the Joey Logano of the Supercross series. Just when you think he's out, when you think he's gone, he's even been eliminated. Still finds a way back in. He's still going to contend for a championship, and I think that's what's going to happen this year as well. And then over on the 250 side of things, East is absolutely stacked this year. You have Pierce Brown going down. He's looked to be one of the favorites to win this race, ends up not doing that, comes home in 20th. Max Volan, 21st. RJ Hampshire 18th, Austin Faulkner 17th, which that means it opens up the door for Max Anstey, who had the whole shot to just ride on to a victory there, picks up his obviously first win of the season because the first race of the 250 East portion of the schedule. Daxton Bennett comes home in second, and then Cameron McAdoo comes home in third. He just tore his ACL this week, just completely. He said he tore it in half, but he's going to push through the pain and ride this year. Jet had the same thing happen to him. Jet, of course, has the luxury of being a 450 rider with a big contract and a lot of money behind him, and Honda being like, we need you to nurse yourself back together, come back for outdoors. It's totally fine. He went and had surgery. McAdoo appears to be pushing through it, and he finished in third. Seth Homaker comes home in fourth, and then you have Tom Vial in fifth. Vial is your defending champion in the 250 East Series. He had the red plate going into this race. Coming out of this race, that will go to Max Anstey. Overall, another one of those races. Like I said, the 450 race, the 250 race, you're like, what is happening here right now? Really good racing top to bottom. Enjoyed every second of Supercross this weekend. Excited to head on to the next round. I'm wondering if Carvana isn't sure how Daytona 500 qualifying works. Because if you missed it, earlier this week, they tweeted out the Jimmie Johnson paint scheme, the number 84 paint scheme, and the collaboration they're doing with Shaq, Carvana, Shaq, Jimmie Johnson. The car is painted up to look like an old Orlando Magic jersey. It's got Shaq's Dunkman logo on it. They did a commercial for it, an ad. Shaq's trying to hide behind a pillar as if he's not 7'4" and 400 pounds. You need a skyscraper to stand behind if you're actually going to hide Shaq. We can all see you at this point. But they said tune in on February 16th to watch his car in action in the Daytona 500. Here's the thing. Jimmie Johnson has to qualify. He is an open car. There are no guarantees that he is going to be in this race. He has to qualify for his 22nd Daytona 500, and that all starts on Wednesday night in Daytona 500 qualifying, which makes me think one of two things. Either that car is going to be completely trimmed out on Wednesday night, and they are going to try to make it on speed, or their fallback plan is to buy their way into this race to make sure that this paint scheme and this collaboration is in the race. I don't necessarily think the second part of this is going to be what their option is here. I do think that car is going to be very trimmed out for Wednesday night as they attempt to try to lock in on speed. If they don't, they have to go into the duel on Thursday and race their way in. And Helio Castroneves can throw a huge wrench into this whole plan because as it stands right now, and we assume that Helio just takes that 41st place provisional, the open exemption provisional, that still leaves 4 open spots for guys to lock in at. If Elio locks himself in on speed on Wednesday night in qualifying, that knocks it down to technically 3 spots, but somebody else will lock themselves in as well. So really 2 spots to race for on Thursday. And then let's say Elio doesn't lock in on speed on Thursday. Let's say he races his way in. Nobody's using that extra provisional there. Yeah, that's going to really complicate things for Jimmie Johnson and anybody else that is trying to attempt to qualify for this race. So Jimmie and Carvana, maybe he wants to call Carvana. He's like, hey, listen, we're not guaranteed to be in this race yet. We could be. We might be. We could maybe lock in on Wednesday. But if not, maybe we should be like, hey, check this car in action on Thursday night in the duels, because we know we're guaranteed to be in that race, at least. Just felt like they maybe jumped it a little bit here. Dunkman logo, Jumpman logo, both of them going to be in the same race here. It would be cool to see a Shaq car versus a Jordan car, or a Jordan-owned car at that. But there's no guarantee that it's going to happen. Jimmie, like I said, he wants to make his 22nd Daytona 500. He's going to have to do that by qualifying for this race. And I'm not sold on it based on what I saw out of those cars last year, but things could change. John Hart Nemechek talked about all of the changes that Legacy Motor Club has made in the offseason. They certainly hired enough VPs and GMs and other people in front office positions to potentially be fast. We'll see if it all pays off for them. But yeah, hey, the car looks cool. At least they've got that going. Anytime you put an old like Orlando Magic design on something, like, I'm going to be a fan of it for the most part. But gonna have to qualify. So let me know in the comments what you think about Supercross this weekend, cars on track this week, Jimmie Johnson having to qualify for the 500, and Carvana maybe jumping it just a little bit here. We'll definitely have more to talk about this week. I'm headed down to Daytona on Thursday night, which means I'm gonna have to watch the duels on the fly here. So yeah, whatever. We'll recap all of it on Friday, headed to the truck race, Xfinity race, Cup race. If you see me, say hello. Should be a good time. I'm excited to get down there. Some warm weather, finally. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on TikTok at BreakHard, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at BreakHardBlog.